If you'd like to contact the show, send us an email at liveonfourlegspodcast@gmail.com or get involved in the conversation on social media. Join the Pearl Jam Podcast community group on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at liveonfourlegspod.
Mike McFucking McCready right there. And away we go.
You're listening to Live on Four Legs, the live Pearl Jam podcast experience, featuring
Mr. Stone Gossard. Gentlemen! Mama Creed. Matt fucking Cameron in the drum. Mr. Boom Gasper. You can call me Al, you can call me Ed, you just fucking call me, why don't you?
Hello and welcome everyone to Live on Four Legs, the definitive live Pearl Jam podcast. Once again, you're hearing me at the beginning of the show. You may be used to that by now. You may be not. My name is John Farrar. You usually hear Randy Sobel at the beginning, but he is still on paternity leave. He will be back next week, though. We're all very excited, and I want to thank all the people that have come on and helped me out co-hosting during these few weeks. And today is no exception. I've got some co-hosts here that we're going to get to in just a second. But first, I would be remiss if I did not mention that we have a new patron, Kathy Berenson. I wanted to mention at the top of the show because I did not mention her last week. Apologies to Kathy. Thank you so much, Kathy, for joining up. She joined up as a bonus leg. Hope she's getting to enjoy all the bonus content over there. We did have a little bit of Pearl Jam news this week. They've announced the soundtrack to the movie Flag Day, which has evidently is going to have new songs from Ed and Glenn Hansard, and also features, I believe, the recording debut of Olivia Vedder, who sings a song written by Ed and Glenn Hansard called My Father's Daughter. If you've seen the trailer for that movie, you can hear her voice there, so check that out. It'll be interesting to see if it's a new original song or a cover. I'm sure we'll get some news on that in the near future. But today we are going to be covering a show from a city that we have not yet covered. We've done 141 of these, and we have not yet covered a show from this metropolis, and it's a big one. It's Los Angeles, California, and we are going back to 2013 to the Lightning Bolt Tour and Night 2. And joining me here we have Jason and Paul from the State of Love and Trust podcast. How you guys doing?
Hello.
Very doing well. Happy to be here.
I can't believe this is the first LA show you guys ever done. 141
the
shows.
Very first one. Yeah, we have been accused of having a little bit of an East Coast bias.
Well,
We've been trying to rectify that a little bit this year, and we're going to get to a bunch of shows later this year too. I think we're going to have a whole West Coast run, but yeah, this is the first LA one that we've done. So, talk a little bit about that, guys. Like, you guys are out there in California. Like, you know, a lot of people know Philly shows and New York shows and Seattle shows and Chicago shows. You guys have been to a bunch of these from what we talked about in Los Angeles. What is kind of the vibe of these? What do they bring to these shows? What's it like seeing a show in Los Angeles?
Paul?
You know, I think when I go back to the shows that Jason and I attended in 2009 during the Backspacer tour, and there were 4 of those actually at the Gibson.
That's a great run, yeah.
Which has since been demolished.
We've been to 2 shows now, 2 venues in LA that's no longer a thing.
So the Gibson was replaced with Harry Potter Land.
That's
I think.
true.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
At Universal Studios. And what did they knock the sports arena down for? It's just a parking lot.
It's called Bank of California Stadium, home of Los Angeles Football Club.
They're playing my Atlanta United coming up here in a couple
They
weeks.
are. I'll be there,
We're
John.
going to have to talk. Yeah. Okay.
So in any case, you know, what's interesting about these LA shows is that I think Pearl Jam, I think they get really jazzed up to play Southern California. There's always going to be some cool cameos in the crowd whenever they come out here, just because of the concentration of music artists that live out here. And I think the energy too, they really feed off the energy of the crowd. I think the shows that we went to, there was just an overall great sense of fandom. I mean, you get everybody in the crowd knows every word, and there's just a ton of singing. And I think he meaning Eddie, really feeds off that. The band is always very energetic. You never get it. Not that they ever phone it in anywhere they go necessarily, but you definitely get the sense when they come to LA that they're really, really excited for these shows. And I think part of it is what you just mentioned, the fact that it's a metropolis. So they know, okay, we're going to do at least 2 or 3 shows here, right? We might even do 4 if the venue is small enough. And so they really get a chance to explore the set list. They get a chance to really kind of mine the catalog and think about what kind of connections they want to make. A great example would be, they did Elderly Woman. I think this is in 09 though, the Gibson. And he was talking about, this is for those of you from Carpinteria or,
That was from this show.
Oh, it's from this show?
We'll get to that.
We'll get to that. So
there may be a little nod to someone.
Little nod. So he starts
to,
just.
yeah.
I think I heard that song on every show here in LA. Yeah. So I mix them up, but he'll drop all these little places, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that being in San Diego for a period, you just got to believe like there was just this affinity for Southern California that it has, and he probably knows a lot of folks and met a lot of folks from LA and probably came up here with Bad Radio and did different things like that. So I think there's kind of a hearkening back to some roots for him.
The Chili Peppers too. Chili Peppers are an LA band, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, they're down in LA. I mean, I want to say Mike resides down here a lot when he's not up in Seattle as well. I think he's down in Southern California. So yeah, there's just always a great energy.
The other thing, not to cut you out there, but the other thing I think about, you talking about the crowds out here, I've been lucky enough to see the band in a few different parts of the country. I've seen them in Seattle a couple of times. I've seen them in New York a number of times, Hartford, Connecticut, Boston, Philly, Reading, PA, West Palm Beach, Florida. You get a different vibe in some of those other places, but
bands don't move to West Palm Beach, Florida to quote unquote make it, right? I mean, nobody gets off the bus saying, we're in West Palm, baby.
When I saw them in West Palm,
we're gonna get letters from West Palm Beach now.
When I saw them in West Palm 03,
where's the Capitol Records building? I don't see it.
It's not there. There's just a different energy you get, and the response from the crowd that would go to a show in New York or Boston or Hartford or something like that, or Philadelphia. If you fold the map over of the country, you do get a lot of those transplants in this part of the country. So you have a similar crowd oftentimes to people that you would be playing to on the East Coast. So I think, and on top of that, you mentioned him spending a time out here, obviously with Bad Radio, who had been playing down here a lot. I mean, you look at the first few years, maybe like even before they blew up, maybe the first 2 years, they played LA like fucking 20 times. Like they played it a ton.
Palladium and Hollywood.
We were talking about our live cut of the week, and we couldn't figure out exactly where the hell that version of Wash came from. Luckily, John came in after the fact.
Yeah.
You guys
Thanks, John.
know,
like you were
yeah, guys.
I literally told Jason, like, we're re-recording that bit. He's like, what? No, I'm dead serious. And now I know it. That's the version that we should have had on there.
Well, and also they recorded all of Backspacer at the Jim Henson studio. Not here, I guess I say most of Backspacer at the Jim Henson Studios. Yeah. They recorded I think a number of other albums, including Lightning Bolt down here, and they did a whole Gigaton listening party in an Atmos venue in Hollywood. Right. They're super aware of LA and what happens down here, and so I think they have a lot of friends, and so you get
Dave lives out here. Dave Grohl,
Yep. So always a good time out here, my friend, and I've gone to a number of shows since 2006 in this part of the country, so very aware of the vibes.
So we kind of gave you guys, free reign over which one you were going to pick. So why did you pick this Night 2 from 2013 as the one you wanted to cover?
I don't know. Jason just told me we're talking about it. So.
Well, I figured, if you're going to have
which of the plethora of shows,
you should have us on a show that we've been to together. And
Well,
that
yeah.
was the most recent show we've been to together.
That's
It
true.
was a lovely
Okay.
show. We were on the floor. So, and you mentioned, you hadn't done anything from LA. So why not?
Right on. So, walk us through the day there. You guys went to the show together? Were you guys have been friends for a long time? You're doing this State 11 Trust
Mhm.
podcast together now. What was it like, kind of leading up to the show? Because you guys went to night one too.
Mhm.
What was that show like? Give us a brief overview. We'll get to that one eventually.
Yeah.
We can have you back on at some point to talk about that one. But what was it like? What were you thinking leading up to this night two?
I think we were up in the rafters for night one, like stage right, if I
Yeah,
recall.
real side
But
stage.
yeah, and so when we got the floor tickets, we were just stoked over the moon. I mean, this was going to be. I had never actually seen him on the floor before, so that's not true. I saw him.
He's
I
already
saw him in
lying, you
San
guys.
Francisco, but it was
Unbelievable.
yeah, I know. But I mean, I was far back at that point in time. That was at a different venue. This particular show, though, we were going to be right up against it, and so I was over the moon excited. And my wife and I went, met up with Jason. She had a coworker that was a huge Pearl Jam fan, and so he took the other ticket, and doing the merch thing before time. We're getting our posters, and I bought a little Pearl Jam onesie actually, and it was for my
For
daughter.
yourself?
For myself,
Okay.
exactly. It's just, it's got to fit the feminine figure. So I got the this Pearl Jam onesie because I had a daughter on the way, and nobody knew this though, other than my wife, of course. And so I picked this thing up, and it wasn't time to spill the news yet. So I wanted to buy it there from the show because I wanted to say that the first article of clothing I ever bought my daughter was a onesie from a Pearl Jam show. And so I stuffed it in the merch bag, and I put the posters on top for the show. And Jason and I, we collect these things. We're very diligent about taking care of them.
Meticulous.
Very meticulous. And so get them framed and matted and all that jazz. So we're trying to, be careful with these things. And so I had the onesie in there, and the whole time I was thinking, God, I hope this onesie doesn't just like screw up the corners of my poster, man. And we finally get into the floor, and it's just this outstanding experience to be that close to the stage. I mean, you got the techs out there just warming things up for the guys. And I just remember thinking, this is going to blow my mind. I mean, I can't wait to see this place filled up. And there's a moment at the end of the show during a signature song that I was able to just turn around and take it all in and get a glimpse of what that looks like from the point of view of the band. And it was one of the most arresting experiences that I've ever had.
Yeah, it was. I just remember talking to our buddy Jay in line, kind of filling him in on what he missed of night one. There's a moment very early on in night one with Corduroy and Ed stops the show for some asshole in like one of the front rows, kind of messing with some woman, and eventually they kicked him out. And he was like, "No more of that bullshit." And like he was in and you knew because there's like song like 2 or 3, I think it was really early. And I remember looking at Paul and I go, "Ooh, an angry Ed is a fun Ed.
Salty Ed's going to be good for
and
tonight.
so that show had its own level of spice, my friend. So eventually when we get to that one,
there were no quarters thrown, though. No quarters were thrown.
Ed wears his heart on his sleeve at every show. You always know how he's doing.
Exactly,
He's not
exactly.
good at hiding how he's feeling.
Wow.
Yeah.
So going into night two, I'm talking to Paul, I'm talking to Jay, and I'm like, what are you looking forward to? And he goes, My Father's Son.
And he reveals that's his favorite song.
I'm like, what the hell
Lightning
are you talking
Bolt.
about?
Like,
That
what?
song is not that good.
Really?
But okay, you do you, man. And we're kind of recapping and trying to catch your breath. And I think I actually got into a car accident on the way to the show. Like some gal rear-ended me on the off-ramp of the 10 freeway to try and get off to go to the show. And turns out it was like a hit and run because her license was all invalid and shit.
Ooh.
So that was fun. But
the
so I was a
10
little
freeway.
annoyed.
That's a nice tie in there.
Exactly. So that was that was a weird way to start the night. But then when I got there, it all kind of went away, and I was in a good mood and talking about, what we're going to hear. We heard all these songs last night. We heard Black last night. We're not going to hear Black again tonight for sure. And then, running in there as soon as they open the gates and you get in there for GA, everyone, all the quote unquote psychopaths like us, racing to the front on the floor of the LA Sports Arena. And just trying to find your spot, and then everyone kind of like takes their seat, and they're making friends, and who are you? Where are you from? So it was cool. I think I'd been on the floor maybe a couple of times before, maybe once before, but it was the first time with close friends, and it was just really really cool. So we were in there to experience something, and we knew that they were stoked to be there because I know Bruce Springsteen had told Ed that they got to play there, which is weird because they played there in '91 before the famous Cow Palace New Year's Eve show. But
Yeah.
yeah, we
The
were just really
acoustics,
stoked.
he loved the sound.
Yeah,
Bruce.
love the sound quality. So we were in there
So,
ready to
that's
go.
why you got,
Acoustics were ready to go, and
because
what did
we
they
were
do?
baffled. We were like, why have they not played the bowl? Why are we not seeing them
I
at
know
the
that's
bowl?
so weird. There's so
You
many
know,
venues
and
here, John, and they haven't played the bowl yet, which is
it's
incredibly weird because
it's
it's
like
so
an
famous.
iconic LA venue. And so for them to be there, we're thinking, God, we're like driving all the way out here just to watch them play this dump.
This old clunky arena.
This Clink Arena. Oh, well, apparently the boss says it rocks. So
So
what the
there you
hell do
go.
we know?
So yeah, that was
So
the
this
pre-show.
show,
Yeah.
let's get into this because this show has got some twists and turns, and we've got a lot to get to here. So we open up here with Oceans.
1, 2, 3. To the thread, the currents will share, glide me towards you. No, something's left, and we're all alive to dream of the next. Of the next time we do. You don't have to stray the oceans away. Waves roll in my thoughts. Oh, tap the ring. The sea will rise. Please stand by the shore. Oh, I will be there once.
Fitting, for the West Coast. That is something you guys get out there that we don't usually get a lot over here. We start off with a front three here. I'm going to throw in some soccer references for you, Jason.
Please.
Oceans, Low Light, and Present Tense. I thought you guys have got to be blown away by this opening three. You're thinking, what are we in for tonight? Like, this is a top three that indicates that something special is going to happen.
Oh, Oceans isn't played very much. I think it's
No.
the least played off of 10.
Yeah.
Correct.
Funny
It's
enough,
a great
he fucks up
opener
the
too.
intro.
It was like harkening back to old school LA shows, when they would actually open a 10 set with Ocean. So we were super stoked with that one. And I'm a big fan of Low Light. I mean, it's one of my favorite songs, especially off of Yield. So when they came out with that, that was a song that I was convinced I would never hear live, ever. So it was just such a treat to hear. Yeah, I just didn't think I'd ever hear that one live.
Well, I mean, Low Light, the last time I saw the band in Seattle, they did play Low Light, and it was, I think, the second song after maybe Long Road, I forget.
I guess they like it in the two-hole.
It's found a home there.
Gets on bass often.
Spot. Yeah.
Gets on bass often. But to throw in Present Tense at number 3, that's not a song you usually hear that early in the set. So I remember us being on the floor, and then Mike starts in with the riff, and I'm like, ooh, okay. Like, I love that song a lot. And what I can really remember is once they really built it up in a nice linear fashion where it kind of got more aggressive as it went. Whereas I feel like the studio kind of builds in stages. And once we got to the the outro, the jam outro, I noticed everyone around us was bouncing. And like, that's a fun jam. That's a good little rock and roll jam, but it's not like fucking Blood or anything. It's not,
No.
it's not crazy heavy rock and roll, but everyone's kind of bouncing on the floor. I'm like, we're 3 songs in and people are bouncing to present tense. It's going to be a good night.
Jeff really stood out to me on these front 3 too. His tone on Oceans is very, very good. You're getting a lot of vibes from Jeff early on here. Low Light is a Jeff song.
Yeah.
And then his fills on that build up in present tense that you were talking about. He is running all up and down the fretboard on that thing. Sounds really, really good. Really stood out early on here.
Now we did not expect, by the way, what came after these 3, because that was a surprise to get this early, by the way.
Yeah, but I mean, it's 2013, and you're getting a deep cut from 10, a deep cut from Yield, the deep cut from No Code to open the show.
Yeah.
You're thinking, this is going to be one of those
Where are we
nights.
going?
Well, I didn't expect Interstellar Overdrive to come after.
Yeah, Interstellar Overdrive comes in. We get a little section here with Interstellar Overdrive into Corduroy, Lightning Bolt, and Amongst the Waves. And we're kind of transitioning. You don't really get a quote-unquote like a punk rock set here. You're not getting like a Hail Hail or Save You or Go or an Animal or anything like that. What'd you guys think of kind of changing it up here, getting these kind of like mid-tempo kind of soaring ones here?
Well, that's where the band shines. I mean, I know Lightning Bolt at the time was Jason's favorite track off the album. Amongst the Waves was up there for me, and Corduroy just it's the quintessential Pearl Jam mid-tempo track. And so I think having those 3 looped in that way, it really kind of let you sit with that tempo as opposed to bouncing up and down. There wasn't a lot of ebb and flow. It was just, let's just sit on this wave, if you will, for a bit and just kind of coast with it. And I think it allowed the show to settle into a groove as well as us.
Yeah, and the thing with Corduroy is it was pre-extended jams. I'm not too big of a fan of the crowd work they've added in the last couple of years.
Okay.
Then they extended it again, maybe a year or 2 after they started doing this with the extra like mic solo. And for me, like it kind of breaks up the momentum of the song. So I'm not a fan of those changes. But in 2013 we were before that, and so they just kind of fire right into the mic solo, which of course is amazing. And then they have a really cool double time outro from Matt, which is great. I love that. And I think the combination of Interstellar into Corduroy, they used to do a lot more often, I think earlier in this century. Sounds old to say that, but like it's true. Like in the early 2000s, like I feel like they did it a lot more.
You're not wrong. Yeah. Thanks for making me feel old.
But I think it was really great to head from there straight into Lightning Bolt, because I do love that song. I think it's I remember Mike at the time saying he thought it was going to be a great live song. And I think he's damn right. I think it keeps the momentum going, keeps everybody on their high, and then going into Amongst the Waves, which I think I've learned to love a lot more over the years. I think when it came out on Backspacer, I was like, oh, this is cute. This is fine. I like this. This is fine. But then I've really come around to, I think I ended up watching back some performance from, it might have been ACL from like 2014 or something like that. And it was just incredible. I go, you know what? This song is great. So keeping that up really high was awesome. I think it was cool that he dedicated that to all the surfers out there. Mm-hmm. Which I think he tends to do at least once per West Coast show.
That brings up a good question for you guys, because you're right. We got to talk about, you mentioned Corduroy, the solo. Mike really goes off script on the Corduroy solo. It's fantastic. love when he just lets those notes hang like that. But it does kind of end with a whimper. Before Lightning Bolt, he says, let's keep this thing going, gets it going. And then he says, before, like you mentioned before, Amongst the Wave talks about how him and Mike got to surf in, and Sundays are kind of hard to knock the roof off. Did you feel like it was a little bit subdued early on, being like a Sunday night?
Well, I mean, you come out playing Oceans and then Low Light and Present Tense on the mid-track Corduroy. I mean, at some point, it's like, hey, is it the crowd or is it the fact that you guys are cruising at 55 and it's, yeah, I mean, at some point, it's like, are we going to move into the fast lane here? And so I don't blame the band. I was enjoying it. I mean, I thought where they set the show up was fantastic. It felt like a real narrative was being built, both sonically and, I mean, if you want to look at the lyrical content, you could make some connections there too. But I do think that they noticed, I wouldn't call it a lull, but I think there was kind of a, I guess you could call it a bit of a disconnect, I think. Jason, when did they look over to the right and see a very prolific member of a 70s classic rock band sitting in the crowd? Was that this early or was it later?
No, it was later.
Okay.
I think it was probably in the encore.
We'll get to him too.
We'll save that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was they don't play back-to-back nights anymore, really, that often. If they're playing 2 shows in a city, they still have a day off. Fenway and Wrigley in 2016, there was a day in between. Seattle and Chicago and Fenway in 2018, there's a day in between. So, I mean, at the time they were, what year is this? 2013, the year of our Lord. So we're talking 8 years prior. So he's 48. Ed's 48 at the time.
Yeah.
So I mean, they're not that old, but it's still that's a lot of energy to be expelling the night before with 30 some odd songs and then coming back the same night. I mean, it's not like in 03, 15 or 10 years earlier than that, when they're only 38, playing, a 3.5 hour set at the Garden and coming right back the next night and playing Crazy Mary out of the gate. Like that, they could do that then at 38. I mean, I could do that now at 39 if I had any kind of skill, but maybe not when they're 48 and definitely not when they're 56. So I don't mind. And you look at Present Tense again. Present Tense starts kind of calm and slow, but it builds up. So they use kind of the crescendo within Present Tense to bring it to the level of Corduroy and then Lightning Bolt, Amongst the Waves. And so I didn't mind it. I was content right there. It was after that where I took I don't really miss songs, but if I was the kind of person to go miss a song for a bathroom break, that's where I'd take my bathroom break. The next song. Yeah.
Track number 8 here, I think was, well, except for Jay. Jay was over the moon.
Jay was excited.
Ed comes on, says,
If you've ever had a father that ended up in prison, this song's for you.
And you get the third ever performance of My Father's Son and the first on the West Coast leg. Talk about this a little bit. You guys said you had...
hey, I was grateful for it. I know it sounds weird to say. I was grateful for it because I knew this is going to be one of those tracks that is often, that is never played. Like, I knew, I was here and I heard it.
Check it out.
Up on the old PJ Stat Tracker, and but then I knew that I'm never gonna hear the song again. I mean, it doesn't matter where I go see him play. It'll be 1 in a million that I happen to be in the venue, that part of the world, that night where they decided, what the heck, let's pull this one out of the old bag. And so I was grateful for that reason. My hope is always to hear, when they release a new album, to hear as much of it as possible, because I never know how much of it's going to sustain itself through time and keep finding itself within circulation, as they go through the catalog. So to that degree, I was happy to hear it, but it wasn't necessarily a song that I particularly find endearing.
Yeah, and there are songs that find their sea legs live versus in the studio, and we've had a whole show kind of about that. What songs we think are better live than the reverse. And there is a song in a few that we think does much better in that form. I don't think that this one did that. I think it was as what it is from the album. I was hoping that it would be that would have a little bit more teeth to it. But, you know, aside from Jeff's bass tone, which, like you said before, was great, it didn't really do much for me, and I was happy to move on to Give Him the Fly.
Yeah.
Yeah, Given to Fly here, I think, you know, it's in the even flow spot. You don't get even flow until later on, but we're here kind of at this mid point, almost the main setting. You mentioned it earlier where you talked about, you know, this wave is just kind of, we're just kind of riding this wave. We're just kind of like waiting for something. We're waiting for it to break. And Given to Fly, I think, is the first time at this show where it really explodes and the show really elevates. This is a really fantastic version of Given to Fly, and you can tell Ed, you know, goes to sing to the back for the second verse, like he's walking all over the stage. I think this is the point where they're really feeling. This is the first performance where you're like, okay, they came to play with this one.
Yeah. It was interesting being so close to the stage and having Ed walk to the back of the stage and sing to the folks back there. I remember thinking to myself, that's awesome, but wait a minute, I'm over here, man. I finally get to the floor and you're singing to the rear. But I thought it was super cool that in an arena that was designed that way, that he recognized the opportunity to kind of like look around and actually loop them in and kind of give them that moment where they could kind of look down and say, wow, we're not just like staring at the back of the band the whole time, you know? So I was grateful for that as well. Jason, wasn't there a woman holding like a sign for Fatal? Wasn't that at the show? Yeah, I remember seeing this was like, there was a period where people were holding up signs for songs all the time, and Fatal happened to be a very popular one for a while. I remember seeing a woman holding up a song for Fatal back there. And I don't recall if anybody in the band acknowledged that. I want to say that to some degree it was acknowledged, but they didn't actually play the song, obviously, during the show. Right. I thought that was pretty cool. Now, when he comes back around, though, it was interesting because where do you go from a song like Given to Fly? It has this epic ending. So it was fascinating. I was expecting them to go with something heavier, like something off of
10,
10 maybe, or Animals or Go or something. And I did not expect what came next.
Right back to Lightning Bolt.
right back to Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, you bookend Given to Fly, this little section with another deep cut from Lightning Bolt, only the sixth performance ever of Swallowed Whole. And this feels like one that, like you guys said, like that never really found a play. It never really blossomed live like something like Lightning Bolt did, or like something like Unthought Known or Just Breathe has.
Yeah,
it felt like it never really had a chance.
It's one of those Ed songs. It reminds me of Gone. It's you know what I mean. It's just this kind of like Ed solo vehicle to a degree, not in the way that Just Breathe and the End are, but it's just that type of track that never really seems to gain traction. And I think that when you hear it, you think they're going to play this a lot, you know, and they're going to try to make it into something. In the same way I felt like Gone kind of had that little movement behind it from the band in terms of pushing it out that way. And it just doesn't seem to grasp hold the way that I think sometimes they think that it might. And so just like with My Father's Son, looking back on it now, I'm glad I had the chance to hear it live, only because it's another track that I doubt will ever be featured in a show I attend.
Yeah, it was definitely one of the tracks off the record that I was not. I mean, I thought it was fine. I didn't find it to be wholly necessary, aside from checking it off my Stat Tracker app. I thought it was a little bit more rocking than the studio version, which was cool.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's just one that I never think about.
Yeah, it's when I think about playing Lightning Bolt, there's probably 7-8 songs, and I'm like, yes, like I want to hear those songs. And I'm like, oh yeah, Swallowed Whole, I forgot about that one. Like I forget it's on the record, and so it kind of gets lost in the shuffle. And so when it was over, I was like, huh. But then you hear the preamble to one of my favorite songs, and I was like, and we're back.
And the way he played that too, it was so reminiscent of the way we used to get it back in like 95. And because there was a period where he didn't play that little intro. You know what I mean? It was a long time where it was just played and let's just go into the first note. And I thought it was really, really exceptional to hear the way that they kind of reintroduced some of these songs in ways that maybe we hadn't heard in a while.
We need Romanza coming back.
Mm.
Ooh, maybe.
That'd be
But
pretty
yeah,
cool.
this next little section starts with Immortality into Infallible and Small Town. And this,
Now,
I
go
agree
ahead,
with
John.
you guys, that this Immortality is much needed in this set. Like, you needed, after, all these kind of lightning bolt deep cuts and kind of late era songs, you needed something from the old days to kind of grab this crowd, and shake them into paying attention again almost. Like, Mike is absolutely stellar on this.
Yeah, he was.
Cameron just owns the jam at the end. Like, this is definitely a standout performance from the show, I thought.
Exceptional. Loved it. It's one of my top 5 to 10 Pearl Jam songs. Adore this track. And I always wanted to hear it with that little preamble that Jason talked about. So to hear it played in that way, I felt like I got to experience something that previously I was only able to vicariously experience through my bootlegs. And so I was really excited about this particular rendition.
And I think you mentioned it correctly, John, in that Mike's solo is fantastic.
Blistering. He was great.
And when the song, ends, quote unquote, there is that little outro dealy they kind of nibble on, but I think it goes on a little bit longer than usual, and it's welcome. Like, I'm down to hear some more of that. Like, we can wait on Infallible a few seconds. Just give me a little bit more of this outro. You know what I'm saying?
Down through the cracks beneath the door. Holier than thou, surrendered, executed, and the hell scarred this up, take our box on the floor. True and a fine home, we still hold on to. Yeah, there's a trapdoor in the soul.
It was a really fun rendition of the song, but also it's in a very weird spot for that song. Usually that's in an encore or maybe it ends the main set, but no, it's sitting here at what, like 13? No, 10. 10.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
And we've got kind of, if you look at this, we've gotten these songs from Lightning Bolt are so interesting how they're spaced in here. It's almost like they've done that on purpose. Because look, you had the title track Lightning Bolt, then Amongst the Waves, and you go back to the Lightning Bolt album for My Father's Son, back to the '90s for Given to Fly, back to the Lightning Bolt album for Swallowed Whole, back to the '90s for Mortality. Then here we are back to the Lightning Bolt album for Infallible, and that's going to continue for the next couple of songs as well. So
Yeah.
it's interesting how they almost like we're kind of going back and forth here.
I
Well,
wonder.
We
this
switch
was
back.
important, I think, for me.
Yeah.
It was because being where I was, there's a certain booming thump that you get with those speakers right in front of you. And Infallible was the type of track that when I heard it on the album, it felt very overproduced in a way that turned me off to a certain degree. And Jason and I have talked about this in terms of tracks that, we think sound better live versus on the studio. And I had mentioned that on more than one occasion, I'd mentioned Infallible as this shining example of a track that you hear live and it's a whole different complexion. And I think not having that extra production and just letting that crunchy, just heavy guitar come in, I felt it in my chest. I mean, it was just like this thumping, this sensation in your chest. And I developed this great affinity for this track live to the point where I'm actually hoping to hear it every time I go to a show because I want to experience it that way because I know I never will experience it on the album that way. So I was very, very appreciative of the opportunity to hear that song live. And it taught me that when you listen to an album from Pearl Jam, especially at this era, or in this era, I should say, it's really important to couple that experience with going to a show because you're going to find that there are certain songs, and I can't wait to experience this with Gigaton because there's a number of songs that I think fall into this bucket that are going to have a different sound complexion live. And it's really important for you to kind of embrace the marriage between those two things to have a full, well-rounded global view of not only this song's place on the album, but within the catalog as well, because so much of what they do is because they want to go out and play live. So Infallible to me was just a great example of a song that I loved hearing live. And I remember looking at Jason and looking at my wife saying, God, I wish it sounded like that on the album.
Yeah, it was important, I think, for them to alternate the Lightning Bolt songs. I think they really did want to check off the entire album while they were there, or as much as they could. I'm to your point from earlier about My Father's Son. I'm glad they did because I do want to check these songs off. But like you said, it does sound better live than on the record. So I was pleasantly surprised, and it sits in between two very famous songs, which we've heard a ton, especially the next one's coming up. But the older these guys get and the more new albums they put out, if you go and see them, you're still going to get so many of the earlier, the first 5, 6 albums, you're going to get a lot of that. And so as we go, like we're going to go to a show, we're going to, we're going to Ohana, probably not going to hear maybe one Backspacer song, maybe one Avocado song, just because they're going to still lean heavily into, the stuff that most people like. And so your opportunity to hear some of these songs is like, I am never going to hear Bushliger. It's just not going to happen. You know what I mean? Maybe that's a bad example, but you know what I'm saying? So I was very happy to hear it. And I'm happy to hear it again if I do. Going into the next song real quick, though, I will say that we talked about on a recent episode songs that, what was it? It was songs that I think was it I didn't have to hear again or something like that, or that are I used to love, but now don't as much kind of thing. And Small Town for me is a song which I really enjoy, but I've heard it so many times and it's such a simple pop song that there isn't a lot of dynamics to it. So the way that you get people involved is you do what Ed did and start naming random small towns in the area. Funny enough, I only recognized Reseda. I didn't recognize any
Carpinteria.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them.
I don't think it was that random, but I'm gonna go.
Oh, really?
I 100% agree with. Yeah, we'll get to that in just a second.
Okay.
I agree 100% with Paul about Infallible. I love Infallible. It's one of my favorites on that album. I think it is very good live, and I think it actually fits in thematically with a lot of the Gigaton stuff. So I would not be surprised if you heard it coming up in this next tour. But yeah, Ed does the thing where before Small Town says anyone from Reseda now. I think that might be a veiled like Tom Petty Free Fallin' reference, because isn't that like is just a smaller living in Reseda? I think he might have been given a little nod to Tom Petty there, so I don't think that was quite as random as some of the other towns that get mentioned.
Yeah, Fife, Carpinteria. What else did he say?
Reseda. I'm trying to
Reseda,
remember.
I got that one. I know the other ones I never even heard of.
It's
Yeah, I don't know the other ones. And then he says it's for Judd and Leslie. Obviously, that's Judd Apatow.
Correct, yeah.
And Leslie Mann. So they're Judd Apatow, noted Pearl Jam fan, so he's probably in attendance there. Small Town, again, the crowd takes it.
So you, come on, here we go.
One of the first chances for this crowd to really show what they can do. Do you guys remember that hello in Small Town and being kind of like being impressed by the volume
this was where you started to really get a sense of what the crowd could supply to a show like this in an arena this large.
And they waited 12 songs to really have a chance to do it too.
Yeah. Right? And so what it did though was create a tremendous amount of anticipation for what some of the songs that we will hear in the encore sound like, and the role the crowd can and does play, or will play, I should say, in those tracks as well. So it was a nice kind of foreshadowing of that.
So we're after Small Town, we get a little section here. We get Future Days and Even Flow, and again we're continuing with these alternating lightning bolt tracks. And this Future Days is important because there's an issue in the crowd. Ed stops singing halfway through, gets very intense. You can see in the video, evidently someone in the front row faints, like loses consciousness and has to be brought over. It turns out they were okay, but you can see the look on his face flashing back to Roskilde and things like that. And like, it's like a mixture of like terrified, worried, intense, like, it's almost scary to watch because and knowing, he mentions it a couple of songs later, we come back and someone had an issue but he's fine. Do you guys remember seeing that? Do you remember feeling kind of the mood change?
Well, he kind of messed up the lyrics in the first verse and then
it
resumes it. And I was like,
yeah.
Is he doing that again? And then you recognize that there's something happening in front of us.
Yeah.
I couldn't really tell what was happening.
And that's the issue when you go to these shows. It's always the guy that's like 6'5" that stands in front of you,
right,
and you're always looking around and thinking, all right, there's got to be like 15 of these dudes around me, right? And I'm looking to my left. No, it's just right in front of me
every time.
Like, what the So no, there were little moments like that where all my energy was dedicated towards enjoying the music and needling my way around to try and get a better view per song, So there's all kinds of little things like that I didn't even pay attention to.
This is a weird Future Days too, because now it's kind of become almost the campfire thing, but this is a very sparse, like Ed's almost basically solo. Jeff's doing some
it's weird,
subtle upright bass.
I was hoping for some piano. There's something about I wanted boom in there, and so
he's
I
adding
was
a little bit of stuff. Matt's not
Yeah.
playing; he's just singing. I don't think was Mike even on stage for this? I don't think he's
I don't
playing
remember.
anything at all.
Who knows? I don't remember seeing him there or not. But
like if you listen to your headphones, I can't tell if he's in there because usually he's in your left channel.
Right.
And I remember hearing Ed in his acoustic, and then Matt singing, and then obviously something else was happening probably from Boom, but it wasn't the piano. So I was like, this is just an odd version of this, and I like the song a
It
lot.
is.
Yeah.
It's only the 10th performance of Future Days. So interesting. But now after Future Days, we get to the payoff, and we're gonna get to a section here. Even flow, do the evolution, mind your manners, and even flow. It seems like they've just been unleashed. Like Ed does a thing where before the solo, he calls out to Mike like melt their fucking faces, and talk about this. Do you remember? There's a moment where you can see Mike just jab his headstock of his guitar into the amp, like breaks the front of the amp.
He's been known to do it.
Yeah, was this kind of the moment? This had to be a big like cathartic moment at the show because yeah, you had Small Town, but you hadn't gotten a song from 10 since the very first one.
Yeah, they finally got to a place where they wanted to let loose. I mean, it took them 12 songs to let the crowd let loose by singing Small Town. And I think you have a guy like Mike who, I think him and Matt are the two that if you said, we're going to play verses in 10 and that's it, they'd be like, cool, let's rock out.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily need the more dynamic slow ones to intersperse, but I guess Ed had a plan, and they were probably a little, I mean, they're not going to not like playing their songs, but they're probably a little pent up and like, let's go ahead and kick some ass here a little bit. And so when you listen to his solo and you see him reacting to the catharsis that he is getting out at that point, that he's experiencing, you really can feel that coming back at you. And, it's one of the songs, Even Flow, is that some people like to go to the bathroom for because they've heard it a ton of times. It's played over 800 times. And I said to Paul last episode that we did, I don't look at it that way. I think the main riff and the groove it never lets me down. Mike's solo is always different. Hell, in 06, they even added a Matt solo before they got back to the groove. So like, there's always something to be said for Mike in that song in general. So I was super stoked to let the rest of myself come up to where my voice was for Small Town before he got into the next couple that kept the energy up.
Yeah, I agree. I think, listening to like we do, like almost a different version of Even Flow every week has given me a little bit of a new appreciation for it. Like Mike is in full Jimi Hendrix mode on this one, playing behind the back, falling down to his knees. He's all over the place. And afterwards we get the first hint that Ed might have imbibed a little too much. He calls out Mike and calls him Mike McFucking McCready, which is McFucking is just the perfect,
the best.
Yeah, I'm surprised that hasn't stuck around for Mike.
That's
Mike,
on the secret menu at McDonald's.
Yeah, exactly. Mike McFucking McCready right there. Perfect. And not to mention, I don't want to leave out Stone. Fantastic melodic Stone solo during Do the Evolution. We need our Stone solo alert banner to run here. Fantastic. And then getting to Mind Your Manners, we're finally, you're getting finally a section here where they're like this three where they're letting loose on this crowd. Like, you guys have got to be noticing a lot more people moving around, and like, cause with all those lightning bolt songs sprinkled in, you're kind of like, you're getting into it, and then you're like, oh well, maybe I don't know this one as much. Casual fans might not be as familiar with it, but here you go. Like, yeah, you're giving people a chance to move for a few songs in a row and get the blood flowing a little bit.
Well, here's the thing about that, John. So if you're a savvy counter in your head of what you've heard, you recognize that you've heard damn near the entire Lightning Bolt album, which then if you deduce from there means you probably got another 20 songs to come that can't be from that album. So like, what are they going to pull from? You don't know where it's going to come from. So I love Mind Your Manners. I think it's a great punky hard rocking song. Again, another sick Mike solo. So I'm happy to hear that whenever I hear it. And it kind of, it kept the whole thing up. My wish is that they didn't then bring it back down because the last two songs that keep things at a place. But I guess maybe for those 48-year-old bodies, they had to kind of keep it, bring it down for one song, I guess.
Yeah, let's get to this because following Mind Your Manners is one of the if something very interesting happens. Let's put it that way. So during Sirens, there's the moment where Ed, gets the acoustic guitar to kind of bring the song home and get to the end, and something happens. You guys were there. Walk me through what you saw here, what you remember about this little incident here. We'll say in Sirens.
I wasn't happy with the way the guitar sounded. I know that.
I heard it too. Like
Yeah.
the thing about that song is I'm pretty sure they played it the night before, so we saw them change instruments. I know that Mike starts the song with his 12 string, and Ed is guitarless, and then right before the solo, Mike switches out to his Gretsch White Falcon guitar, which is fabulous,
Mm-hmm.
and from there you see Ed receive his 12 string, and the first drum doom. It's like the whole band has kind of like receded for a second. It's before everything kicks back in again. And I'm like, that does not sound right to me. Am I hearing things wrong? And you see Ed look to the side stage and he strums it again. And then you get that like the Jeremy eyes. And you're like, oh fuck, something's not right.
Yeah, the Jeremy.
Yeah, yeah. So the guitar tech brings out the guitar. Like you said, it's horribly out of tune. Ed looks back. The guitar tech runs out to get the guitar to rectify his error. Instead of handing it to him, Ed kind of holds it back and then just drops it right as the tech is about to grab it. Like, fuck you. Because evidently this was an ongoing issue that they had through this little run of shows here. I think it had happened in Brooklyn. I think when we talked about this on our Discord, Randy had popped in and said, yeah, I remember something happening in Brooklyn where it was out of tune and he was mad about it. So this I think was the final straw. And the text name, you can go back and find this information. It's Rick Weinman, aka Ricky Ramone. He had been Johnny Ramone's guitar tech, and he had been with Ed for 5 or 6, 7 years. And he comes out, you can see he's a big dude. He's got some facial hair. And for the rest of the show, he does not come back. And it came out a couple of days later that they had fired him after this show. This was the last straw for this dude. And I feel bad. The guitar techs, we always shout them out. They do an amazing job. It's a thankless job. They've got all these songs in different tunings now. You got to switch everything. And if you make a mistake, everybody knows it, right? This whole show comes to a stop if you make a mistake, and that's what happened here. And this dude got fired. And yeah, you can just like the Jeremy eyes is a perfect way to describe it. You can tell Ed's mood changes, and and I don't know if it's the multiple bottles of wine that he had probably in taken by this point or what, but from here on out there hasn't been a lot of like talking and crowd interaction at this show, which was a little interesting. Usually on the night twos,
Yeah, there was no like long hello.
yeah, you might get some stories or something, but he's very quiet in relative to a lot of other shows on this tour. And I think the combination of him being drunk and these sound issues just led to kind of a change in the mood. After Sirens,
it was
okay,
nice
yeah.
in the sense that you get that. It's almost like the denouement in a film, like the and what I yeah, and so what I liked about it is knowing how the show ends and the energy that is brought and just what Ed specifically ends up doing at the end of the show. I thought in retrospect, you almost don't remember little moments like this because they're superseded by these amazing displays of energy and this connection with the crowd that you experienced during the encore. So I kind of felt like it was all part of telling a very fascinating story of what it's like to put on a concert. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's no shortage of talking points here. After Sirens, we're going to finish up the main set here with the first performance of No Way since PJ20 from 2011.
Here's a token of my openness, one I need to not disappear. How I'm feeling is so revealing to me. I found my mind so pure. I just need someone to be there for. Oh, I just want someone to be there for.
Yeah.
And only the 11th performance total. So you guys are getting a very, very deep cut here.
Well, this was huge because, and I'll let Jason really embellish this story, but we would always talk about this track, and Jason has a wonderful backstory about this song that he's covered a few times on State of Love and Trust podcast, and would love him to cover that one here, but I want him to tell that story. But it was a song that neither one of us ever thought we would hear, ever, period, ever again, and Jason's story will enlighten everyone as to why. So when we heard it, we both looked at each other and we had eyes bugging out of our heads. Like, are you kidding me? Is
No
this
way.
happening right now? No way. And it was. That's exactly what it was. So it was a treat because it wasn't just a song that you got to check off. It was a song that was one of my, how do I say, it wasn't my favorite song when I first heard Yield, but it was up there when I first heard the album. It was a song, I just love the way it kind of reverb cuts back in. And you get that kind of circular echo effect at the very beginning of the song, the album. It never sounds like that when they play live, but I didn't care because it crunches, So it was a song that I would always wish they would play live. Never understood why they didn't play live, and I just assumed I would never hear live. And so to do so was a real treat.
Yeah, it didn't.
Jason, the floor is yours.
It didn't sound like the album, as Paul said. It sounded definitely different. I think they kind of rejigged it just a tiny bit to, I guess, suit Stone because he's the one that didn't want to play all these times. But when I saw them at the Forum here in Los Angeles in 2006, I believe it was the second of the two shows, July 10th, I went with a friend whose uncle happens to be Tim Robbins, and we got to go under the belly of the Forum, the Great Western LA Forum, and meet Ed. He was drunk, but very cordial. I was wearing at the time, and it's still applicable at the time, my Free the West Memphis 3 t-shirt, which he really appreciated. And I'm there with my friend, and they were all a little bit younger than me, and I was 24 at the time. So I was down to have a chat, and we're getting to talking, yada yada. I asked him about a sign that I held up at the Reading PA show, Vote for Change, back in 2004, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I remember you fuckers." And I said, I really appreciate you guys busting Leash out again for the first time in a while recently. That was one of those songs we hadn't heard in a while. It reminded me of the whole Breath campaign in '98. That was an amazing thing. But there's going to be a new song campaign. And he goes, "Oh yeah, what's that?" And I go, "It'd be great if you guys would play No Way." And he goes, "Hey Stone," turns around, and Stone's smoking a cigar with Dennis Rodman in the back of the room. "Hey Stone, this guy's demanding we play No Way." And I said, No, just a request. Just a request, guys. And Stone just gives this really confused, what the hell are we talking about look. And Ed's just laughing, and he's having a laugh at me. But they didn't play it again for a little bit, but I will take 3% commission on the fact that they brought it back.
You should. And you might want to
Fantastic.
double down on that commission for Breath, by the way, buddy.
Yes,
That's right.
which we'll hear later on in the show. But yeah, it was super cool to hear that. It was super cool. I'm pretty sure it's the only time I've ever heard it, and I may not ever hear it again. So again, completing my, if they ever play Red Dot, I'll complete my yield cycle.
Yeah, I got to hear No Way at my first show back in '98. I think it was only the second or third time they played it. And yeah, but they've only played it one time since the show. Only Yield Walkie in 2014. They have not played the song since 2014. So it is way overdue. I think you might be onto something if you guys are looking for a new
What would
a
that be?
new
What would our next song be?
I think it's got to be this one. You gotta bring it back. We need signs. We need a campaign.
Oh
We
no,
need to
we
hear
have
No
one.
Way.
We decided we want to bring back Garden more. I know it's been played
Oh, okay.
enough, but like
did
we
talk
really
about
like that
that.
song.
It's not a bad choice. Not a bad choice. But again, Ed just starting to feel it a little bit at the end of No Way. You know that they're repeating that ending. He just starts stalking the stage in circles, and you can tell like something's
animal
going
was
on.
unleashed.
You're getting a little bit of that intensity, and what's next to end the main set? It's Blood.
It's a perfect set closer, I think, mostly because thematically the song, I think, really captures what a lot of artists out here feel. The commercialization of things, the exploitation, the marketing, all that stuff. And so I feel like when they play a song like that here in LA, there's a little added, I don't want to call it incentive, but there's a little added relatability for a lot of folks in the crowd. But more than that, I think Ed is channeling a lot of history from what has occurred here in this place over the last century or so. So
Yeah.
a very apropos way to end the set. And it was, you know, to recycle this word again, it's blistering. It was just a blistering version of it.
Even with Ed's vocal inabilities to get to certain places these days, it's still
shot by that
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
treat. He definitely needs the encore break after this one. That's for sure.
So this is again like there's a moment here after Blood where you see Ed kind of do the slit throat motion. I wonder if there was like maybe a rearview mirror that was scheduled after this or something, and he cuts this set short and says like, "Nope, we are done."
Have we seen
And
the set list from this?
I didn't get a chance to go back and look at it.
I'm looking at it right now. Oh,
No, I
you
mean,
mean
like the written
the one
one.
he hand wrote?
The original,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because I wonder if
there was some stuff crossed off.
yeah, because talking about Sirens, and that kind of swung his mood. I wonder that we've all seen live on Corny or Imagine in Cornice and them going over the set list, right? And going over the encores, and they kind of just make it up on the spot sort of thing. I wonder how that influenced the decision to axe, presumably RVM or.
Oh, here we go. I got it.
You got it up?
Lucan, Hard to Imagine, Down, Crazy Mary, Comatose, and Ledbetter were on the set list, but were not played.
Wow.
Can you imagine that? Like the Lucan could have had that scratched off. Hard to Imagine. Oh man, I would have killed for that one.
Yep.
Down. What a great deep cut.
Mhm.
Crazy Mary, always a delight whenever you get Mike and Boom. If we could have gotten a duel, that would have been outstanding. Comatose, and it's one of Stipp's faves, right? And then I mean, Yellow Ledbetter is a class. I mean, we had some great encores, but those were the songs that were played. I don't know which one of those was designed to close the first set, if at all.
Right.
I don't know how the heck he would have. It's probably not Lucan, because I can't imagine those two back to back.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Ed would have been done for the night, I think.
Yeah, you can tell when he walks off the stage, like he leaves the stage very quickly after Blood.
Do they
I
ever
think he's
close
talking to
sets with Blood?
Yeah, sometimes.
You know what? I wouldn't be surprised if it was a song that required the same guitar tech to have to come out again. And that's probably when he was like, no, we're not doing this track. I'm not going through that again. And he went backstage. They probably just handled some business and then came back out. I would imagine, if I was a betting man, obviously pure conjecture on my part, but I could see that being the case.
Yeah, they like I said, they walk off very intently, very quickly. I think Ed's talking. He's talking to Jeff or somebody. You can tell he's upset about something. So while they're gonna take care of their business, we're gonna take care of a little bit of business. This is the encore break. We usually do a little station identification here, talk about Patreon. I'm not gonna spend too much time on this because I want to get back to the show. We still got a lot to talk about, but I will mention very quickly. I want to thank again Kathy Berenson for signing up to Patreon. If you're interested in joining our Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/live on four legs. That's the number 4, or you can get the Patreon app and search for Live on Four Legs. We are on there as well. Like I said, Randy will be back next week. We'll be looking to start up, so doing a lot more of the stuff on Patreon, like we have been doing for the first part of the year. So again, now's a great time to join. We got our Concertpedia, Zoom party that we're going to be doing late in August. We're going to be having some fun stuff going on in August. So please, if you're thinking about supporting the show, sign up. $1 a month gets you access to all the extra content that we do there. Super appreciate. Thanks to all our patrons for continuing to donate. All right, so we're going to get back into the show here. Ed says we still got plenty of time.
We're not a competitive band, especially like with other bands. It's music. It's art. You can't win or you can't whatever. But so with other bands, we're grateful for other bands. We're certainly grateful for the bands that brought us here the first time back in '91, which was we played with Nirvana and the Red Hot Chili Peppers brought us. And we were just still so grateful to Flea and Anthony and Chad and now Josh and of course my great friend Jack Irons, who that's how I met Stone and Jeff. So our band owes so much to that band. And literally, I owe so much to Jeff and Stone and Mike for having faith in me in the early days, and Matt for agreeing to be in our band even though I was in it. This one goes back so far. It was before even met these guys or even really knew who they were. And it was just something that I was sitting on the edge of the bed a long time ago. It was just a bit south of here, about an hour and a half south of here,
and then we get another little interesting performance here. We're going to talk about. Ed's, still a little bit pissed off. He says this one was written sitting on the edge of the bed, a little bit south of here, and it's Better Man. And the ending of this Better Man, I don't know if you remember, right before the jam is over, he runs by Cameron, gives him the signal, again, gives him like the cut the throat signal, like cut it off. Like he's like, I don't want to do Save It for Later tonight. Matt doesn't see him and goes into the breakdown for Save It for Later, and Ed turns around and gives him a look like, dude, I told you not to do that. He is pissed off, and you can tell he does not give a fuck about the end of this song. Do you remember that? What was the vibe like here?
It was confusing.
Yeah.
I was trying to, I was just really enjoying the moment, and I'm following Ed, and I'm like, what is he doing up there? Like, usually they're all kind of simpatico when it comes to ending a song or ending a jam, and they didn't seem to be. So what the hell was going on? It's also it's not very strange, but it's a little strange to have Better Man be the first song out of an encore.
It is.
Usually you have it like one of the last couple of ones of the 6 or 7 of an encore as they build. So the other thing, it might even be the last one. But therein usually is the tag. And you're right. For whatever reason, the thing with Sirens and then however they ended Blood and didn't go into whatever they're going to maybe play next, it carried over. And I wonder if the whole thing with the guitar with Ricky just really got under his nails, and maybe he wasn't happy with his performance. It's hard to know why maybe he felt that things were going on too long, because they'll chop that down and not do a tag if he's like, shit, we're getting along in the tooth of the night and I got a whole bunch of songs that I do want to play. That I can understand, but to do so abruptly, to Matt, just it seemed out of character. and to be so mad about it. It's hard to know what he was thinking.
Yeah, it's strange because a lot of times especially these night two shows, the vibe is so good, and this one is just, it's very strange to see him just very visibly frustrated and angry during these
Mm.
performances. Yeah, I wonder if this was maybe the spot where, the Hard to Imagine would have been, where you would have come out and gotten something like that, some kind of a deep cut to come out. And yeah, it's interesting too because they followed immediately up with Daughter.
So like, yeah, if you're worried about time, you don't bring out Daughter and play for 8 minutes and
Yeah,
41 seconds.
yeah.
So it couldn't have been about time, right? Because even if it was about time, they wouldn't have played After Hours after that. So like, it's really confusing. There's all these songs on the menu here that they could have played and they chose not to. But so why keep in a song like After Hours? Why play Daughter for 8.5 minutes?
hmm Yeah, Daughter is interesting too because there's a moment where a beach ball is thrown on stage, and Ed sees this as an opportunity to take out some frustration on this beach ball, runs over and just kicks the shit out of it. Even like loses the microphone for a second, like stops singing, which he normally doesn't do, but he like sees this and goes, "Oh, okay, here's a chance for me to." And like we've talked about at the beginning, he always wears his heart on his sleeve. You always know exactly what he's feeling. There's a little bit of a call and response tag, but then it felt like this another brick in the wall was kind of like a fallback, like, oh, here's something that I know the crowd is going to pick up on. So here's something that uh, you know, another brick in the wall for 2013 is not, you know, it's not something they were really feeling at the time. It seems like they were
No,
kind of
that
moving
was
on to different things.
that
Seems
was
like a
years prior
throwback.
that they were playing that one
Yeah,
afterwards or singing that
yeah,
one in the tag. So that was a little odd. I mean, it's
yeah.
nice to hear, but like I don't know that what was the point where he started being less creative with those tags and just kind of sat on two or three,
Well,
I
it
don't want to
would
say he's
rotate through. It seemed like every tour leg you would get one would kind of he would jump on one and do it for a few shows, and then that one fall off, and another one would pick up, and you would get things mixed in with WMA or get things mixed in like you would get something new that they had been feeling, and then you would get another brick in the wall. Then you would get WMA. But yeah, this is just weird. It felt a little. It just didn't feel like their heart was in it. Maybe that's just me.
and that's the other thing with Daughter, and we spoke about this a couple episodes ago on our show, but the thing with Daughter is it feels like the best part of that these days is the build up to the tag and that groove and that bed of like that atmosphere that whole
hmm
outro
It's
kind of
the
creates.
anticipation. The whole crowd knows
Yeah,
what's coming, and it's
yeah,
like, what are we gonna get? What are we gonna get?
yeah.
Yeah,
Where does it go? Like, is it going to be? It's okay. Everyone loves that since Jones Beach,
yeah,
and another brick in the wall is cool, but the I feel like to a certain point sometimes the choice he's making on these tags is a little phoning it in. And this is one that we've heard a ton of times before. And again, if you're in a bad mood, why are you going back to the well? Don't you want to spice things up a little bit if you're going to be taking 8.5 minutes to do Daughter? I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah. You mentioned After Hours. We get a little section here. After Hours, the Velvet Underground cover.
If you close the door, this night could last forever. Leave the sun shine out. Say hello to never. All the people are dancing and they're having so much fun. I wish it could happen to me. But if you close the door, I never have to see the light again. If you close the door, the night could last forever. Leave the wine glass out and make a toast to never. Oh, someday I know someone will look into my eyes and say, hello, you're my very special one. But if you close the door. I'll never have to see the day again. Dark party bars, shiny Cadillac cars, and the people on subways and trains. Looking great in the rain, looking so disarrayed. Oh, but people look so well in the dark. If you close the door, the night would last forever. Leave the sun shine out and take a toast to never. The people are dancing and they're having so much fun. I wish it could happen to me, but if you close the door, I'll never have to see the light again. Oh no, I'll never have to see the light again. One more time, I wish I'd have to see the light again.
After Hours obviously played, Lou Reed had passed away earlier in 2013, so they had broken out, started to break out this Velvet Underground cover a few times on this West Coast leg.
Live debut that night.
Yeah. I saw a couple of people mention that this version especially was a little more intense than some of the other ones. And I thought that might have been due, to Ed's frame of mind that we've obviously keep harping on. But
yeah,
it felt like this one, a lot of the other ones have kind of more of a sweet, kind of lilting feel to it. And this one definitely does not.
No, it was pretty intense. And I will say I've never really been the biggest Velvet Underground or Lou Reed fan, but I do appreciate the classics. And I'm glad that I got to hear this because there are a number of covers over the years that they really haven't played all that much. There are some that they play into the ground, and there are some that haven't been played all that much at all. I mean, who can remember Walking the Cow back at, Mountain View?
Sure.
There's certain songs like that. I'm like, man, wouldn't it be cool if they busted that out again after all these years? But then they'll think of something brand new and they'll break out Draw the Line at Fenway with Tom Hamilton from Aerosmith. I'm like, holy shit, they're bringing out Tom.
Right.
So like, I appreciate a new fresh cover every now and again, so I'm not going to be mad at it. But I will say that it was the start of a few songs here that I just don't really care about. So for me, the encore starts off, unknowing, at that point, I'm probably pretty drunk too. So not super aware of what's in Ed's mind. And you get Better Man, you get Daughter. I'm like, oh shit, this is great. And then it kind of drops to After Hours. I'm like, okay, this is cool and all, but like, I don't really know this song too well. And then Sleeping by Myself, it's like, for me, that song, when I heard that was on Lightning Bolt, I was like, really, guys? We're going to take a song off of Ed's uke album and then zhuzh it up and make it a full band. And that's going to take a spot on this record. That always annoyed me. It's a fine rendition. It's okay. Whenever I see it on a set list now, or if I'm playing the album on my phone or whatever, I'm just like, why do they?
Yeah, it's
take it off?
It's just always a set killer. It feels like it always kills the momentum.
You're in a fucking encore. Why are you wasting my time with this kind of a song? And then to go into Mother, which I really don't like. I mean, I'm a huge Pink Floyd fan, but I cannot stand this song. I'm sorry.
Third Pink Floyd reference of the night, because you got Interstellar Overdrive, you get Another Brick in the Wall Part 2, and here you get Mother. Little too on the nose.
I love Pink Floyd, but if you're gonna go that route, if you're gonna steer into it, give me Comfortably Numb, or find another new Pink Floyd song to do. Like, I'm down. You want to give me Have a Cigar? Go for it. Like, but Mother, just
that's Foo Fighters territory. You're getting into Foo Fighters territory there.
I am. You're right.
They've done that one. Yeah.
But like, this 22 through 24, After Hours, Sleeping by Myself, Mother. Again, like I said earlier, I am not the type of person to leave for a pee break or a beer, unless I'm dying, of course, of having to pee. But like, I don't leave. But I'm just like, I tune out a little bit. My energy comes down, and then, I mean, luckily we're saved by maybe my favorite song of the entire Pearl Jam catalog. But like, that's tough in an encore to have those 3 songs in a row, and I can't be the only one.
Yeah, it's like you said, this encore is structured very weird. You open up with Better Man, Daughter, 2 huge crowd favorites. You get into 3 more obscure songs, 2 of which are covers. people don't really know. Then you come back, like you mentioned. Then you come back with Breath, Go, and Porch to
Unbelievable.
end this encore. And yeah, like Breath is it's good here, and I agree. You mentioned it was one of your favorite songs, maybe your favorite song, but it felt like this was almost a missed opportunity. Ed disappears for a big portion of it. Mike really pick up the slack and is really feeling
Mm.
it and really carries the song. But it felt
Yeah,
like this should have been thrown in a little earlier. You needed this kind of jolt of electricity earlier in this encore, and then you followed up. Go is the intense. That this is the one like we've been waiting for, leading into a really good version of Porch here, where it seems
yeah,
like the mood almost lightened a little bit. Like the third bottle of wine has kicked in, and he's starting to loosen up a little bit here. So yeah, the end of this encore, like we're getting back to fan favorites here.
yeah. And I'm not here to say that it has to be all fan favorites. I am down to hear the the deep cuts. I am sort of competitive with myself where I do want to I want to hear every album in full. I want to make sure that I've heard all my favorite songs played live. It's just like this weird little OCD thing that I have that I really want to kind of get through all these albums. So for me to take 9 or so 10 minutes out of the set and break up Better Man and Daughter and Breath Go and Porch with those three songs, it's a letdown. Like you could have had something else in there. Like I said, yeah, it might not have been the best performance of Breath, but I love the song so much that it didn't matter too much at that
Yeah,
point. I was just happy to
yeah,
hear it after what I just heard. So then to get into Go, which I adore, and then into a blistering Porch. And by the way, and I'll send this to you, I have video from my position in the crowd of the aforementioned Ed swinging on the green globes during
okay,
Porch.
yeah,
So
yeah. Send it
I
over.
will, I will get those to you, and you can put them up wherever. Maybe I'll put them on the community page too.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you're right. It felt like something changed, and maybe Go was the song, or maybe even Breath was the song to kind of snap them out of the funk, and Porch felt much more celebratory.
Yeah, you get a really long jam. The green balls come down like you mentioned. They're having fun. Ed does the thing where he holds up his guitar, he's reflecting the light off the guitar
Love
all
that.
around the arena. Goes for a ride on the green ball while he's singing. A little again, the inebriation, like we don't know for sure. I'm just guessing here, but seemed like he was lucky to make it without falling down off the green ball
Oh,
at some points.
he definitely looked like he could have fallen a couple of times.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
You'll see it in the video when I send it to you. But it, you know what? If you were around in the early days, you saw him probably worse than that climbing rafters. And I know
Oh
he's
yeah.
48 at the time, but it was just fun to see him letting loose in a way that the Jeremy eyes were fading a little bit, and it felt more almost like a happy drunk. Like he wasn't totally back into himself, but it felt better, and you got that. And I think the crowd reaction to the last couple of songs kind of helped him kind of get back. And so that's why you have a 9 minute Porch, and you have I remember Jeff really kind of bouncing around on the stage, and he does the whole thing where he kind of chucks the ball out and then he
Hmm.
avoids it with his head. It's just it felt like they came around, and it was great that they ended the second or the first encore that way, getting into the second.
Yeah, they come out for the second encore. Ed says,
So when does a Pearl Jam concert end? When does a Pearl Jam concert? When they kick us out. How many songs does it take for one fucking Pearl Jam concert? The world will never know.
a nod to the old Tootsie Roll Pop commercials from the 80s. How many songs does it take to get to the end of Pearl Jam concert? The world may never know.
It's a great
And they
reference.
come out and turn around to the back and play Last Kiss. You get Matt standing up on his separate
Mhm.
little kid drum kit there. Ed never really goes to the back though. Again, kind of a weird thing. Like normally he's out there playing it up to the back, but he's just kind of stands up there by the drum riser, but the crowd's into it. It's just it seems like they were again starting to have a little bit of fun here.
Yeah, I mean, we saw earlier in the show where he went back there and recognized the back of the crowd, and I always thought it was interesting that they opened up the venues that way. I'd never seen anybody play an indoor arena where they opened up behind the stage. I was like, who the hell would want to go back there? But if you go on YouTube and you watch some of these shows over the years, where I think it's like PJ Video Guy, or there's another guy out there, I forget his name, who stitches together fan videos, and sometimes you'll get a show where a lot of the concerts filmed from behind the stage. And it's like, ooh, that is interesting. Like, I don't know if I could do the entire show from back there, but it's definitely super interesting to see what the band sees and to see kind of like the behind the curtain
Yeah.
aspect of the non-fired roadies walking around and doing stuff and behind Matt. Cause he's Matt McFucking Cameron. I'm gonna do
Yep.
that.
Well played. Well played.
And you get to see him kind of do his thing, and Matt's so unbelievable that it's always a treat for the back of the arena to get that, and it's almost always Last Kiss, so you kind of know it's coming. But um, it's smart of them, I think, to start with that song and keep things on a high, because it is a crowd favorite. It's been played a ton. It's I do enjoy it because of the mood that it creates, even if it's not my most favorite cover. But it's a crowd pleaser. It's a lighthearted jam, and it's a good way to get us back into the swing of things here.
Yeah, it's the back of this arena was spoiled a little bit because they got that extra verse on "Given to Fly" earlier too sung to them, and then
Mhm.
they get a whole other song here.
Ooh, 1 1/4 songs.
That's right. Interesting, interesting choice here. You get "Unthought Known"
That's
in an
a
encore
real weird one
too.
to put here. Yeah.
Yeah, and I wonder if this was kind of a maybe they were thinking like, oh, we'll kind of capture this crowd again because "Unthought Known" has kind of become next to "Just Breathe." It's probably the one off of Backspacer that people really connect with, but
Yeah.
again, it seemed like it just kind of fell flat a little bit. Like, yeah, you could have used maybe a comatose or something to get people a little get going a little bit here at the end because you don't really get that. Even like something like a life wasted, you sometimes get an encore too, where you give everybody one last chance to go nuts, right? You give them one last fast one before you get to the bread and butter and get to the end.
Yeah.
And it seemed
I mean,
like
I
this,
wonder.
yeah,
I was just saying, I wonder if it was just a chance to kind of they had the time, so they had to put a song there, and they knew they were going to play "Love Rain Over Me" alive and "Rock on the Free World," and so they thought, okay, well, let's just pick out something else here, and then it's not as intense of a workout as as singing wise as "Love" is. Um, and so maybe that was the choice to not go super super hard, but it did. I mean, I do enjoy the song. It is a crowd pleaser, but you don't expect a Backspacer song to be the fourth to last song of a show. It's just a little strange.
yeah, it was a little strange. And the cover choice too. I mean, this is again keeping with like the '70s classic rock theme. You're getting "Love Rain Over Me," which is a very good cover, and everyone always loves the chance for Boom to shine, but it
Mhm.
it felt a little out of place here to me.
Well, I mean, I think it definitely is an encore song. I think the problem is that it's right before live, and because it's right before live, you kind of I I feel like you have to kind of build to a live, in a sense. And Love Right Over Me kind of has like a real cathartic crashing ending that like almost like where do you go from there sort of thing. Like maybe it should have closed or been right before Porch, maybe. I don't know. It feels weird before live. And it's also difficult because the best version I ever heard of the song by far is the VH1 show at
Right.
the Poly Pavilion over at UCLA back in '08, when they were honoring the Who. That is easily the best version I've ever heard of that song. Um, and so I always kind of compare it in my head to that. Uh, but nevertheless, I do really enjoy it. So I didn't mind it, but it was slightly odd to have it right before live, which, as Paul has said, it was. I mean, that's the moment. That's the culminating moment. And everything after that is an epilogue. Where I'm from.
Yeah, we're finishing it out here with "Alive" and "Rockin' in the Free World," and this live, I want to give, Paul had to leave, like we mentioned, but I want to give, let's give Paul one last chance because he talked about this version of Alive, and I want to play what Paul said before he left us. So let's take a second and listen to Paul here finish it out for us.
What I loved about the encore, aside from Ed swinging around on those globes, which I thought was just vintage Ed, and it was a type of thing that I never thought I would see from him at that age. I thought that, those days of climbing rafters and doing that kind of stuff was just gone. And so to see that, between that and the way Immortality was introed and some of these things, it really felt like a throwback show in terms of what they were doing on stage, and just the various moments of dissatisfaction, frustration. It really felt like a show from the 90s in a lot of ways. But the signature moment for me, and the most indelible moment that I'll never forget, is during Alive, when at the end, the entire crowd is just joining into that chorus at the end going, hey, hey. And I turn around and I just saw a sea of people, a sea of hands, all in unison, saying and doing the exact same thing. It was the most euphoric thing I'd ever experienced at a concert before. And that you can't experience that if you're not right up against the stage like that. And you turn around and you see an army, a legion of Pearl Jam fans just joining in that affirmation of, yes, we are alive. And I'll never forget that. And so if anybody listening ever gets a chance to see Pearl Jam live and you're ever on the floor, take that in, just turn around, like just breathe that in, because it's just pure magic.
Especially after not having them being gone for so long, that's going to be a special moment coming back.
Man.
Oh, it absolutely is. So I apologize that I have to move on early here, but I wanted to share just those couple of quick thoughts, and I trust my steward Jason to carry us home.
I just stay. Something wrong, she said. You're still alive, she said. Oh, but do I deserve to be? And is that the question? No. And if so,
really good version of Alive. Kind of a funny moment where Mike goes to solo out in the crowd and falls down. The solo like abruptly stops. He does like a brief crowd surf. Do you remember seeing that? Did you get to
Yeah,
witness that?
yeah. I mean, I remember him coming up to the rail like that, and I was thinking, what is he doing over there? And I think I don't think it was the first time he'd done that. Not in that tour necessarily, but in the last decade or so, I've seen him do that maybe a couple other times. I felt like he almost fell into it because I've seen him kind of go up onto the edge of the security barrier and kind of like, shred to people's faces. But I've never seen him kind of fall into the crowd like that. So that was a little bit weird when I heard the music stop. But like Paul was saying, it was when you get to that point in the song, you sort of lose yourself. And I do remember, like Paul said, turning around and seeing the entirety of the 18,000 people, whatever it is, all in unison singing "Hey, hey, hey" and fist pumping. And there's just a moment with Alive, and like we're talking about Daughter building to the cool atmospheric tag. And what are they going to do? It's like you use Alive to kind of build to the solo and the outro, and it's just like, is it ever going to end? Who cares? This is amazing. It can never stop. Like that's the kind of thing you're always feeling, and that's how it felt at night. That night, and
Yeah.
to be, like I said, at the very very top, to be on the floor amongst all of it, with good friends. It's not an experience that you can really replicate. The only thing that really comes close is going to Seattle in 2018 and being in a very similar point of a much bigger stadium, with my wife at her very first show and having the exact same Alive experience, and seeing the glee on her face and being like, holy shit, this is what you've been talking about. I'm like, yeah, this is what I'm talking about. So
Yeah.
to reverse back to 2013, it was just, it's a legendary venue. We knew that going in, and to get that song, it's the full celebration. So the vibe you were getting from Porch carried through, and you got it through Live, and it teed us up wonderfully for the last song.
Yeah, Alive is one too. I mean, we've got we've got shows coming up. We've got See Here Now, we've got Ohana, we've got Ohana Encore, we got more shows coming in 2022. How are they going to be able to stop playing Alive? Like, how is it not going to be just go on for 20 minutes? Like, how do you stop at this point when they come back? Like, the crowds are not going to let them stop playing it. I would love to get a 15, 20-minute version of Alive.
They're going to
at
get
one of
to a
these.
point. Yeah, they're going to get to a point where the venue coordinators gonna be like tapping on their wristwatch, be like, I know, buddy, but you got to go. That's a $10,000 fine. And they're gonna be like, fuck it, we'll play on.
That's right. That's
Um,
right.
I'm
Yeah,
getting
it's gonna
teased of
be.
MSG in '03 when they said fuck it to the
Mhm.
to the curfew. But yeah, I mean, well, dude, I'll find out. Like I mentioned before, I will be at Ohana,
Yeah.
both weekends. I believe Paul is joining me on the last of the 3 nights. We cannot wait, and I have no idea what they're going to start. I hope they start with Release, because that's what it's going to mean, right?
Yeah. Well, it almost doesn't even matter. Like, it'll be insane no matter
It's
what.
going
They
to be
they could come
insane.
out they could come out with Lucan and people would be like bawling and like losing their shit. Yeah,
Yeah. Now I know life is worth.
that's right. So we're gonna finish the show with Rockin' in the Free World. Another kind of moment here where at the end of Rockin' in the Free World, Ed kind of grabs Mike as he's finishing the solo and again does the cut it throat motion, like, do not start Yellow Ledbetter, we are done. Because there's that moment, like right after
Yeah.
Rockin' the Free World, sometimes Mike will just go into Yellow Ledbetter.
Right.
Ed made sure after what happened with Better Man that he was 100% clear. This is the end of the show. We are
Yeah.
not doing Yellow Ledbetter. We are out of here. So yeah, again, then he falls down in the center of the stage, takes a big swig of wine, spits it up. Dude is having a night
Oh
here.
yeah. It was
Yeah.
a whirlwind of emotion for him. He was happy, he was sad, he was angry. So I mean, he's probably just at that point he knew he was done, and
Yeah.
maybe they were up
Yeah.
against it time wise. I don't recall what time they finished that night, But I'm so
Yeah.
conditioned now to always hear "Let Better Close the Show." Like I can't remember the last time I went to a show and they didn't close with it. Funnily enough, and as much as I love the song, I'd be okay with not hearing it the next time. I mean, actually, not the next time because I haven't seen them in so long. But like, maybe night three of Ohana, maybe they don't. Just for change things up a little bit. Like maybe just end on rocking or end on fucking up or end on
Mm-hmm.
indifference or something like that.
You get a Bob
Um,
O'Reilly or something. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I mean, hey, rocking the free world, always fun. At that point, you're just gassed. Like you basically spent everything you had and alive. And now you're just like, all right, Keely, turn the lights on. Let's wander down.
Yeah. And there's a moment in this too where Mike, goes down to his little, platform below the stage, and he's got his heads in his hands, and he's saying like, he's screaming no, or he's saying I don't know. It's just a weird moment. You couldn't tell what he was looking at or if he was talking to someone in the crowd, but
Off the
again, a
stage?
strange moment. Yeah, like during the end of the song, like
Oh,
when
I didn't
kind
even see
of
that.
Stone was soloing. Yeah, it's interesting.
Hmm.
Ed comes on, does the band thank yous. They do not do the bow at this show. Interestingly
Weird.
enough, they cut that out. Ed runs through the band members. Poor Stone does not get mentioned in the band thank yous, but he does thank Gene Simmons.
Mike McCready, Jeff Hagan, Ed, Gene Simmons, Matt Cannon, Boom Gospel.
Who
Yep.
evidently was on the side of the stage,
Yeah, right next to Mike.
among others. Yeah. So yeah, and they cut it short, the walk off, and they are done. Mike takes a couple of Polaroids at the end, and that is it. So
Yeah,
what we do? Oh, go ahead.
no, I was to say it was just it was a strange night, but because of who we were with, it didn't matter. Um, and just a very odd main set and how it went back and forth as we discussed. But still, I mean, any night out at Pearl Jam is gonna be a good time. So
Yeah. So what we do here, we've come to the end of the show. We give our top three moments from the night. I will go first. Lead us off since you were there. We'll let you bring it home. My number one is going to be, my number three, I should say, we'll count backwards, is Immortality. Like you talked about, just much needed in this set. Absolutely fantastic solo for Mike and a little cool jam at the end. Matt just kills it. That's my number three. My number two moment, I thought the beginning, the Ocean's Low Light Present Tense. I'm gonna kind of combine those into one.
cheater.
Very cool way to start the show. I felt like it kind of didn't live up to that intro. Like it felt like you should have gotten something a little more epic than what you did get. And my number one, I'm gonna stay away from all the drama at the show. My number one's gonna be No Way. You talked about
Mm.
what a cool thing that was. First time they played it since PJ20, only one time since. Just a really surprise kind of deep cut here to get at this show. I think really elevated it into something really cool. So, do you have your top three moments you can share with us?
Yeah, yeah, and I assume that we are being positive with our moments here. So
You
I'm
can
gonna.
go however you want to go.
No, no, no. I like to stay positive. So I am gonna go with present tense being so early and how I think it really was a wonderful transition song from the quiet kind of stuff to the mid-tempo, a little bit more aggressive stuff. And that was a perfect placement for that song going into Corduroy. I would say number two would be No Way. I think it coming out of nowhere, first time in I think what is it, 64 shows, something like that. They had played it since PJ 20. That was amazing to hear. I think it was the only time I ever heard the song, so we were so stoked to listen to that. And then I think the interlude of Porch, because we saw the happy or the happier um, Ed come out, and to see him kind of swinging across, and then kind of once he was done with that in the very outro, he was kind of leaning on the fans up on the security riser. It felt like from my vantage point that he felt like he was back with the crowd and that he felt more comfortable again. And that's kind of why you got the uh, the last encore the way that it was in a more positive tone. So those would be my three.
Very cool. Very cool. I will let you give the rating first then. So on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you rank this one in the pantheon?
I would give this a cool 7.5.
Okay.
Yeah.
7.5. You know, I went back and forth on this one, and I considered, you know, giving it a good score because there are really good moments, but I think the whole vibe of it is weird, and I don't think the lightning bolt song stuff came off like they expected it to. The kind of gimmicky thing, like
Mhm.
let's do every other song. I'm gonna give this one a 6. Um, and again, some great performances, some memorable things, but I think too much drama. Ed's in a bad mood. Not a lot of stories. Not a lot of banter back and forth.
Yeah.
And I
I'm gonna
just
revise mine. I'm
it's
gonna say a 7.
okay. That's fair. I just think yeah, this one it's just weird, and it's not something that I'll probably go back to. Aside from just that moment of the the kind of uniqueness of just watching Ed kind of have a meltdown
Yeah, that was weird.
during the show. Yeah, strange,
I
strange.
would I would be
So
right there with you because outside of the fact that it's a show that I've been to, so reliving, the positive experience of being on the floor during a Pearl Jam show in general, that's not a complete disaster, is a
yeah,
great time. So I think that's the extra point bump that I've given
sure.
it
And yeah,
right
you
there.
guys, you're
A little
with Paul,
biased.
you're with your friends, like you guys,
Yeah.
you're having a blast. Like you said, you weren't even aware a lot of the stuff that
Yeah.
was happening on stage. You probably don't. A lot of the people there probably didn't realize that. It's only going back and watching the video that we pick up on these kind of cues and things that you know what to look for. Well, Jason, thank you so much. We got through it, man. Thank
We
you
did
so much
it.
for helping out, coming on the show. Thanks to Paul. Let's give you a chance to talk about State of Love and Trust. Talk a little bit about what you guys do over there if people aren't familiar.
So, if you are new to us, yeah, me and Paul do State of Love and Trust, new episodes every Tuesday morning. And we try and dive into, I think we kind of stay in more of the studio portion of the music and try and attach songs and albums to current events, both outside of the band and as a part of the band's journey. Um, and really try to kind of zero in on which songs apply to those things and why. And we have kind of top three or top five types of things it can be kind of silly, like, it could be just a top five riff of a record, or it could be, hey, talk about, a song that really represents one of the pillars of the Vitality Foundation and talk about why that works for that, and what could be a new pillar of the Vitality Foundation if they added a fourth, and what song would be great with that, and that kind of thing. So we can get cerebral, we can kind of fun and silly and superficial, and then we always end the show with a lyric of the week. So we kind of take a chunk of lyrics out of a song and kind of dissect them from different angles, and then end with the best live version of that song to Paul's rules, because Paul has very specific rules. It has to be from the time period that the song was released. So there is some
Right.
guardrails there, but so we end the show with that, and it's a fun time. We try and keep things um, relatively tight, but I think everything has its place, and I think that amongst the rest of the Pearl Jam podcast community, we have our own little pocket in you guys and Brandon and In Too Deep guys and the Porch Gals, and we all kind of have our own little enclaves that we do really well. And I think it's a lovely compliment to everybody else. So happy to be along in the community here, and please check us out wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, excellent. Please do. And you guys were nice enough to have me on last year.
That's true.
We talked about some Georgia shows after the election, and we talked about some stuff there. So thank you for that. Happy to return the favor. Glad to have you on. We'll have to have you guys back in a couple of years when we get to another Los Angeles show finally.
Okay. I can talk about any other show you want. I've been to 20 some odd shows.
Nice, nice. Check out State of Love and Trust. We'll be back, of course, next week with a new episode. We'll be going back to the year 2000, going back to the iconic.
2000.
That's right, the iconic end of that tour, the Seattle November
Ooh,
6th, 2000 show.
nice.
Randy will be back next week. We're here. Miss you already. Not for much longer. I'm usually checked out by the end of the show. I don't really know what's going on. So we will say good night. Talk to you guys next week. Bye.
Tuned in, but he tuned out. A bedtime, nothing could save him. Alone in a corridor, waiting locked out. He got up out of there, ran for hundreds of miles. You made it to the ocean and a smoke in a tree. The wind rose up, set him down on his feet. To share his key to the locks on the chains that he stole everywhere. Oh, but first he was stripped, then he was stabbed by a faceless man. Yeah.